Okay, this is chapter summary time. Your family attends this Bhagavad Gita chapter summary? Okay. This is chapter 13. And chapter 13 is a transition from the third and final section of Bhagavad Gita. One way that Bhagavad Gita is described is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And the first 6 is karma yoga, second 6 is jnana yoga, and the middle 6 is bhakti yoga. Of course, it's bhakti yoga throughout, but emphasis on detached work, emphasis on knowledge, and then bhakti is in the middle. It's all bhakti, but bhakti is supported by detached work and transcendental knowledge. Another way of saying is that what's in chapter 13 through 18 is just going more deeply into what's already been described. Because the knowledge that's in the first 12 chapters of Bhagavad Gita is not new items so much in final 6, it's just going more deeply. For example, chapter 13 is largely, it's a Sankhya section. Sankhya in Sanskrit means count. So there's Sankhya Yoga sections, 2 earlier ones. One is in the first 6, the other is in the second 6. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, the first half of chapter 2 is Sankhya. Krishna says it. Okay. The first half of chapter 2 is Sankhya. In verse 39 of chapter 2, Krishna says, "Thus far I've described Sankhya. Now I'm going to describe Buddhi Yoga." So Sankhya section is very simple. It's matter and spirit and controller of both. There's categories of matter, there's categories of spirit. We belong to the category of spirit. That's Sankhya. There's more detail, but that's Sankhya. Then again, in the middle 6 chapters, in chapter 7, in fact, there's a Sankhya section. It's really short, but Krishna says there's 8 material elements, and there's 1 prakriti, and there's para prakriti, and then I'm the controller of both. That's Sankhya. He lists them: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. That's Sankhya. It's short. And then in chapter 13, it's expanded. So chapter 2, chapter 7, now substantially, chapter 13 is Sankhya. In fact, the chapter starts with Sankhya. It starts with a question. In the beginning of chapter 13, so this is a summary. In the beginning of chapter 13, Arjuna's asking for more detailed information about what he's already heard. He asks 6 questions, and there's 3 pairs of 2. 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. So the 6 questions, this is now the first verse of chapter 13. Arjuna wants to know about Purusha and Prakriti, spirit and matter, and field and the knower of the field, that's matter and spirit, Kshetra and Kshetragya, Prakriti and Purusha, Jnanam and Gayam, matter and spirit. Now, a really nice, for your study purposes going into the future, a very nice way that's very helpful for understanding a chapter summary is Purijan Prabhu's book, As They Surrender Unto Me. That's the title of the book, which is, rephrasing chapter 18, text 66. Sarvadharmam prityaja mamekam sharanam vraja, that verse, 1866. That's so at the very end in the appendix, he has made it really simple. Actually, of the little background. He and one other devotee, a sannyasi named Danadhar Swami, spent about 8 years studying and then teaching, and the other would audit the class, and then the other who was auditing, taught, the other would audit, to work on this As They Surrender Unto Me book, to have a study guide for studying Bhagavad Gita. That's what it is. It's really good. It's like they really worked hard on it for an extended period of time. And Purijan is the author. And so he describes that chapter 13 is responsive to a verse in chapter 12. I'm going to read the verse from chapter 12. Chapter 12, text 7. Chapter 12, text 7 is where Krishna says, according to Purijan's words, he's going to redeem his devotees. That is, from chapter 12 is devotional service. And those who engage in devotional service, Krishna is going to do certain things. Those who worship me, this is chapter 12, verse 6 and 7. Those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, karma yoga, and being devoted to me without deviation, that's bhakti, undivided bhakti, engage in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having their minds fixed upon me. Oh, son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So he's going to expand on all of that by diving into Sankhya. So how does Sankhya connect with Bhakti? Or say the same thing a different way. From Bhagavad Gita's chapter 13 on Sankhya, it's really expanded in Kapila Dev's teachings. Nice Bhagavatam said over here. So in Canto 3, starting with chapter 25 through 29, it's Lord Kapila Dev's teachings to Devahuti. And chapter 26 is Sankhya. It's like really, really detailed, head-spinning detail. It's not really simple like chapter 2 Bhagavad Gita or chapter 7 Bhagavad Gita, or even here, chapter 13. It's really detailed. But he's an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. And Krishna is the Supreme Lord. So why are they teaching Sankhya? Bhakti is the process. How do they connect? It's a foundation. It helps to know what's what in order to do bhakti properly. How does this connect with that, connect with Krishna, who is the source? Because matter is dependent upon spirit, not the other way around. So if you understand how the puzzle pieces fit together, different combinations of matter under the direction and supervision of the Supreme makes for a life of devotion, a complete life of devotion. Okay. Hare Krishna. Okay, refocus again. Sankhya fits with Bhakti because it gives a foundation for what's what. It helps to know what's what when you're doing bhakti. I mean, you can do bhakti without, a child can do bhakti, but more mature, to mature in bhakti, it's essential, not optional. It's essential to know what's what. Knowing what's what doesn't have to be super detailed. But basic, everything comes from Krishna, and the matter moves on the basis of spirit, not life comes from matter or something like that, because that's what's taught in school, and that's not what's taught in Bhagavad Gita. That was taught in the Vedas. So it's a little challenging for people that want to do well in school to hear Bhagavad Gita and have to rework their thinking process. So the connection. So when Kapila Dev teaches Sankhya, the conclusion of that Sankhya chapter is 2 sentences, 2 verses. Now that you know what is the difference between matter and spirit, fix your mind on spirit. And there's a supreme spirit, Paramatma. And as you fix your mind upon Paramatma, then you can fully engage yourself in devotional service. Now that's following the Sankhya process the way that he gave it. We don't have to do like that, but it fits because it's the foundation for bhakti. That's the point. Now back to this 12th chapter, verse number 6 and 7. Krishna is making a little promise that he's going to elevate those who engage themselves in detached work. I'll read the qualifications here. Give up all their activities unto me. 1. And being devoted to me without deviation, engage in devotional service. 2. And always meditating upon me, having their mind fixed upon me. So it's what the body does, what the mind does, and what the heart does. So for such persons, I'm the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. Now, how is that accomplished? Well, that's what chapter 13 is expanding on how that works. And so then the questions of Arjuna, not a new set of questions, a new set of answers, but it's very specific. It's Sankhya in terms of Purusha Prakriti, Kshetragya and Kshetra, and Gyayam and Jnana. 3 pairs of 2. Spirit and matter, spirit and matter, spirit and matter. Okay, so that's the beginning. Now we have a few more verses in the chapter. Of the 6, where Krishna chooses to start, is explaining the field of activities and the knower of the field. Really simple. Field of activities means the body. He says it. Field of activities means the body. And one who knows the body is the knower of the field. It's simple. And then the field is where we have our opportunity according to our propensities, psychophysical propensities to do work. We do through the field of activities or through the body. And that's almost it for that section. He then says, in addition to each individual soul knowing their field of activities, there's another knower of all fields. And that's a super soul. So we're already into this meditation business where there's the soul and the super soul, because like this person was asked to speak about concentration. One can concentrate on matter entirely, but real concentration means to what's beyond matter. Adhoksaja, that which can't be seen by the senses or perceived or touched by the senses. That's the realm of spirit. Real meditation isn't just like, fixing your mind on getting a good score in school, or getting a good job, or getting something, in the material field. It takes some concentration to do that. But the meditation, the Sankhya, is teaching us to go beyond that. Here's the categories of matter. There's the categories of spirit. Fix your mind on the categories of spirit. And there's an additional knower of all fields. Real simple. Example. The example is a agricultural man, farmer, may know about his field where he cultivates. But there's the landowner, using Vedic model, or, the zamindar, the one who owns the land. He knows all the field, or the king. He knows all the field. He doesn't just know one farmer's field. He knows the whole thing. So, as the king knows all fields, the supersoul knows all fields of activity. And then there's the individual knower. And that's that section. Spirit and matter. Then comes the next section, where Krishna is now going to describe knowledge, because he was Arjuna's question, knowledge and the object of knowledge. Knowledge and the object of knowledge. So when he describes knowledge, that's chapter 13, texts 8 through 12, a large section. He is describing, one way to look at that section is he is describing qualities. And how do qualities develop? Qualities develop by one of those principal qualities, which is Mayi Chananya Yogena Bhakti Abhyavicharini, or undivided Abhyavichari Bhakti. Undivided Bhakti, devotion. And from that comes good qualities. And how does that come? Undivided devotion. Another in this list of items of knowledge is Acharya Upasana. Worship Upasana of the Acharya, the spiritual master. Then comes Mayichana, the undivided devotion to Krishna. And when those two are together, all the other ones become possible. They're not automatically going to follow, but they become possible. Naturally, they'll follow. So, that's the process. Back to chapter 12, verse 7, it's how Krishna delivers. How does he deliver? One becomes situated in transcendence by Abhyabhachari Bhakti and Acharya Upasana. One becomes situated in transcendence, and that's liberation. Hey, knowledge, not just information kind of knowledge. Like read Bhagavad Gita and you can recite the slokas kind of knowledge. Or if you have a Bhagavad Gita exam, you can give the right answer to the Bhagavad Gita exam. I mean, that's necessary, but it's not everything. But the everything is undivided devotion to Krishna. And then you have transcendence. And how do you get that undivided devotion to Krishna for the third time? It's right there in the verse and the purport, by accepting, by worship of the spiritual master, specifically. Now there's other language used in other places that describe these two things, but I won't go into that right now because of time. Well, I'll mention. There are various lists. There are various places in Scripture where there's lists of qualities. One of those places is in Bhagavad Gita. What's Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita is on your table over here. It's canto 11 of Srimad Bhagavatam. And in chapter 11 of canto 11, Krishna gives 28 qualities of a devotee, which are some of the very same qualities listed in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 8 through 12. but it's expanded. And the principal one is Krishna Eka Sharana. Sharana, surrender. Surrender to Eka, alone. That's principle. And then the spiritual master principle is also there. And then the other qualities or characteristics of a devotee are manifest. But when not the characteristics don't deliver you, but it's the bhakti that delivers you. And there's other places. There's listed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's listed in Rupa Goswami's writing. There's characteristics of one who is a bhakta. In case you want to, have a textbook understanding of which are the characteristics of a devotee. But the essential one is this undivided devotion to Krishna. Now that was expressed in the middle 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, including in chapter 12, because the middle 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita are about bhakti. So this is now expanding that, I'm just trying to explain. The last 6 are expanding the understandings already presented. It's giving more complete picture. It's giving knowledge that assists one's spiritual life. And that's the process of knowledge. Okay, we're halfway done with the chapter. But the next section, the object of knowledge. So knowledge and the object of knowledge. So we know what the object of knowledge is. It's Krishna. So from texts 13 to 19, it starts with describing the supersoul, because the supersoul is the manifestation of Krishna. And the supersoul, or the supreme soul, or in that realm of spirit beyond matter, is the supersoul. And knowing the supersoul is part of the process, is the object of knowledge, and by so knowing the supersoul, one is in the liberated position. And only devotees can understand it. In fact, only devotees can understand properly Sankhya, the categories of matter. I'll go back. There's a series of verses, in verse number 5 and 6. Yeah, in verses 5 and 6. Krishna gives, this is Prakriti. He gives the list of 24 elements. I'm going to look back at chapter 7. And in chapter 7, he gives a list of 8 elements. Right? Earth, water, fire, air, ether, that's 5. Mind, intelligence, false ego, that's 3 more, that makes 8. And he says that's material energy. Now, zoom over to chapter 13, and he gives the list of 24, that's the same list of 24 that's in the Bhagavatam over here, the Philadelphia teaching. Which is right? Is it 8 or is it 24? And the answer is, it's just a different model of describing the same thing. They're both right. But other than the 24, there's spirit. And that's what the object of knowledge is, to know spirit, not just to know the 24. I mean, the implication should be obvious, but the education system doesn't give knowledge as it's understood in Bhagavad Gita. The object of knowledge isn't understood, not taught. Mainly. There are occasionally some theoretical philosophy classes or theology classes where it's, the perhaps maybe idea. But that's not what Bhagavad Gita is. It's knowledge of the Supersoul. And by bringing one's consciousness to the Supersoul, then one can understand Prakriti properly also. Conversely, if one doesn't, one will get some idea of the cause and effect. That's called technology. one can become an engineer and understand the cause and effect of things in, very subtle ways. But what's behind that law of cause and effect? It's not explored. And therefore it's not in the category of transcendental knowledge. It's another kind of knowledge, using another kind of intelligence. It's useful, but it's not the goal of life. Bhagavad Gita is both useful and the goal of life. Okay, so that's the object of knowledge. Now we're going on to verses 20 through 26. The combination of Purusha and Prakriti, when they mix. What's Purusha? It means it's the enjoyer. And what's Prakriti? It's the enjoyed. Purusha, Prakriti. And when they mix, depending upon this knowledge comes in the next chapter, with the mode of nature with which one associates with Prakriti, that's going to determine good fortune or ill fortune. Or we're the architects of our destiny, based upon how we associate with Prakriti, the mode of nature with which we associate, and how we try to become the enjoyer of it. That's going to determine the modes of nature. But it's already been described in earlier chapters. Don't try to be the enjoyer of Prakriti. What do you do with Prakriti? It's not meant for your enjoyment. It's meant to be offered to Krishna in sacrifice and yajna. That's what it's meant for. That's the higher purpose for which it's meant. And through the guidance of Bhagavad Gita and Shastra and Guru and Sadhu, one can be on the path of transcendence, moving through material nature and acting in a responsible, productive, etc., way. Very successful, materially and spiritually, but it's actually the power behind the material is not just piety, but it's Krishna, or the devotee at least. So that's that section, the mixing of Purusha and Prakriti and the consequences. And there's material and there's spiritual consequences, depending upon the consciousness of how one mixes. So the material kind is described and the spiritual kind. In verse 23 of this section, Paramatma Purusha, different than the soul, is the super soul. The super soul is aloof from Prakriti. But the super soul oversees Prakriti. Maybe you're familiar with these terms. Upadrasha Anumanta. Upadrasha is he oversees. And Anumanta is he permits. That's what super soul does, while the living entity, spirit soul, is interacting with matter, depending upon how the living entity interacts with matter. Super soul oversees and permits. But if the consciousness of that individual soul is to offer things to the Supreme, that's the connection with chapter 12, texts 6 and 7. He's the swift Krishna delivers, super soul. Krishna delivers the living entity from the bondage of reactionary work. Mode of goodness is also binding. That's described amply in Bhagavad Gita. It's not just an advocacy of mode of goodness activity. Certainly one should do mode of goodness activity. But beyond that, one should do transcendental goodness activity. Regardless of one's conditioning or language, culture, upbringing, color of skin, or anything material, your socioeconomic position, or anything. It's not a materially based principle, it's a spiritually based principle. And what's the result? The result is liberation. if one does like that. If not, the result is bondage. And according to how you associate with the modes of nature, there's a good or bad bondage. But bondage. And then comes the final section, the long section, verses 27 through 35. And Jnana Chakshusha. Chakshusha means to see. Jnana is see through the lens of knowledge. So how does one who is seeing through the lens of knowledge see things? Well, that's Krishna. He sees through the lens. We see as Krishna sees, we're seeing through the lens of knowledge. Jnana Chakshusha or Shastra Chakshusha. So Krishna is giving the picture, description of the soul that sees as he sees, or sees without identification with matter, Prakriti, but identification as Purusha and servant of Parama Purusha, or Parabrahma. Here's those who see the distinction between the body, its owner, and the supersoul, and who recognize the process of liberation and attain the supreme goal. So there we are. Chapter 13 summarized. And then comes the modes of nature, the different ways of associating with Prakriti according to modes. And then there's all kinds of, food and knowledge and recreation and work and in so many categories of, regular life. Speech, according to the modes of nature. It's a really clear picture of how to go from conditioned life, of being covered in illusory condition, to beyond conditioned life. These chapters are important, but the driving force is the Krishna Eka Sharana, the principle of unalloyed service in the mood of surrender to Krishna. That's the essence. And the rest is detail. Okay. Chapter 13 summary. Any thoughts, comments, questions? Is the volume okay? Better? Yeah.
Guru Maharaj, the question, how does the process of permission by super soul work?
The process of liberation, permission. How does the process work? Well, the process works by the omniscience. First comes the upadrashya, so then the Paramatma knows. And then the permission is, he's the controller of the material energy. So that's how it happens. He knows, and then he arranges through his potencies. He doesn't have to lift a pinky, but through his potencies, the material energy moves based upon the desire and the deserve, the guna and the karma of the living entity. It works through the agency of his omniscience and his potency. Swabhaviki Jnana Balakriyacha, in the language of the Upanishads. Parasya Shaktir Vivadaiva Shruyate, Swabhaviki Jnana Balakriyacha. The Supreme Lord has unlimited potencies, and through his unlimited potencies, things happen. So first as he observes, and then he permits things to happen through his potencies. Maya Adhyakshena Prakriti. By his adhyaksha, by his overseeing, by his superintendence, Prakriti is moving. Say it negatively, Prakriti doesn't move without the sanction. How it happens by his sanction or permission. And customized for the guna and karma of each soul.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Kanda Prananam. Thank you so much for that wonderful class. So, by gaining more knowledge, can we do better service to Krishna? Or by doing more services to Krishna, we can gain knowledge? How does it work out?
Both. Gaining more knowledge is theory, jnana, and service brings vijnana. Jnana can steer the behaviors. Vijnana will steer your heart. So both are valuable. I mean, supposing one doesn't have really strong bhakti yet, read Bhagavad Gita. And it'll be, if one reads carefully, it will be compelling, or it'll give strength to my conviction that bhakti is good. But I haven't done bhakti yet so much, so my bhakti muscle isn't well developed. But if I continue to read and develop my bhakti muscle, then it will help. And if one's bhakti is strong, then there's going to be knowledge. Knowledge arises from bhakti. But it's the realized kind of knowledge. It's stronger than theoretical knowledge. You have to start somewhere. We can start theoretical. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, and thank you for a wonderful class. While listening to the class and going through the class, there was a mention of we all are made of 5 elements.
Need of?
5 elements. Earth, water.
Elements.
Yeah. Earth, water, air,
Okay.
and ether.
Okay.
So, we all are made up of 5 types of elements, and we will go back to the nature. And why there will be difference of elements as we grow, because behavior decides, is it the behavior or is it the karma that decides our variations of our nature?
Nature.
Because we all are made up of 5 types of
The
elements.
body is made up of,
Yes.
yes.
So when any of the air or water, any of it imbalances, then
When
there is
even
a
is
change.
imbalance,
Yes, Prabhu. Then there is a change of nature. But when every kid is born, God is blessed with all the 5 elements equally. Then from where does this imbalance kicks in?
You want to know about the mind, intelligence, and false ego, and how do they mix with the 5
5
force
types of
elements?
elements.
That's your question?
Yes.
Okay. Next question. it's under the supervision. We're still going back to that super soul is overseeing, adhyaksha. He's overseeing material nature. That's in chapter 13. In chapter 7 is said Maya Jakshena Prakriti. So he's seeing. Upadrashta is overseeing. And so anyway, he's overseeing. Now, supposing there's a certain mental makeup. I mean, there's always some certain mental makeup. And that's has to do with the modes of nature in conditioned life. And there's some influence directionally by karma towards something. Like say, for example, supposing stealing is a mode of ignorance activity, but supposing one becomes habituated to stealing, then there's a certain karma that, one steals. Because that's, so guna and karma. That's the subtle. Then, based upon the subtle, material nature awards a gross. Material nature awards a gross means Krishna awards a gross through the agency of Prakriti. So your question is, how do they mix? Upon the subtle, the gross is given. Let's just say, here's another example. When the body is finished, the 5 elements are no longer useful. The body is given up. The soul leaves the body, but the soul doesn't leave the body by itself. The soul is carried by the subtle body. Mind, intelligence, and false ego carry the soul to the womb of the next mother, and by nature's arrangement, whatever species, whatever disposition of the mother, etc., one gets a body. So what's determining who's the mother and what species? It's the guna and karma that's being carried by the subtle body. Gross body is left behind. I mean, the one that's finished. So the soul is transferred by the subtle body to a particular mother who with a particular disposition, and when one's body develops. And then in the course of life, one can change the direction that what one's life is moving in by free will, by at least in human form of life, and by association. So when a person that in a previous life was a thief can become, a good citizen, a good association. And their body, the structure of the body, the impulses born of that body will change. Still there's free will choices being made, but the subtle body can also transform and the gross body can also transform. The gross body will transform corresponding to the subtle body. I mean, within boundaries. In short, just to repeat, a gross body is awarded according to the makeup of the subtle body. Nature works that way. Supposing, Udvam Gachanti Sattva Sattva. One is in the mode of goodness, one goes up. Adho Gachanti Tamasa. One is in tamas, down. Madhye Tishtanti. So the body corresponds with the modes and karma. Guna and karma. Is it clear? You want to go further with that question? It's a nice question. Is it okay? Okay.
So, but there are so many choices that we are.
There's
Yes.
choices every moment.
Yes, there are so many choices that we make. And I know karma plays an important role on the gross body to make any situations on
The
that.
modes do also.
Yeah, and we make any situations or any choices, and if it is wrong, we blame on karma. the karma made me to do that, or something we try to compensate ourselves, saying that it was because of the bad karma that this bad things happened or something.
Yeah, that's right.
So
But when bad things happen, you still have free will choice.
yes,
How are
Prabhu.
you going to respond to the bad thing that happened?
So whatever we have done, the bad choices or something, even the subtle body would have impacted because of that.
Sure,
So
sure.
so
The impressions from your past activity, which were bad ones or good ones, the impressions are carried in the mind, which then dictate the likelihood that when some bad thing happens, you get resentful, or you get depressed, or you get whatever you get. You get more determined, you get angry, you remain peaceful. It has everything to do with the vasanas, the impressions that are in the subtle body.
okay. Yes, Prabhu. So it's gross bodies, whatever decisions we make will completely impact even our subtle bodies also.
Could you repeat? Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And in an ongoing way. I'm not stuck on the past choices. I can learn from mistakes or not. And can I not even know I made a mistake and just keep doing the mistake again? I can be, really, bad ignorance. But yes, free will choices impact
Thank
both
you.
the subtle and the future gross circumstances of life.
Thank you, Prabhu, for answering in detail for this question for me. Thank you so much.
That's nice question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. So Maharaj, so when we start facing a lot of negative things, negative problems one after another, and we know that the super soul is watching us, he is permitting us, and he's also doing everything. So the knowledge seems to help. Then this, further it says the knowledge is going to help us. So to overcome all these situations.
Knowledge isn't necessary. I mean, the language is a little. I'd like to add it to language. Okay. Not that knowledge is going to help you make things better. Things are going to be what they are. Knowledge may help you have a better understanding of how to respond to the circumstances that you're calling negative. But the negative is an emotion, the feeling, and and another way is it's an opportunity to serve. And if one's bhakti is awake, then there's opportunities to serve, or opportunities to serve, or opportunities to serve. I mean, take Prahlad. His situation was really awful, but he was just taking the opportunity to serve. His teachers left the classroom, and he's having a Bhagavatam class. And then they have kirtan. The teachers freak out. Anyway, the bad situation can be used for service too. Depends. Because his bhakti, when one's bhakti is awake, it's not just negative, negative, negative. It's opportunity, opportunity. So, acceptance of Krishna's arrangement instead of whining and complaining about Krishna's arrangements or sanction for something to happen. Misfortune will come. It's part of the place. Good fortune will come. Part of the place. Not all of one or all of the other. It keeps changing all the time. It's just the nature of the place. It's a place of duality. So now, rather than obsess about, it's not nice right now, the recommendation is to keep one's attention on the real aim of life, and connecting with the realm of transcendence at all times, when it's good fortune or ill fortune. And that was the previous verses we were discussing. Shubha Shubha Palayar Ekvam Mokshase Karma Bandhana. When one is in that attitude of being detached from work and the results of work, but offer the results of work to Krishna, then one no longer has the auspicious and inauspicious kinds of concerns. Just everything is meant for Krishna service. Now that's elevated consciousness. Maybe we're not there, but that's Bhagavad Gita gives us. Now back to your question, gives us knowledge of how to deal with that properly in the mode of service with detachment. Detachment in the sense of being detached from the idea that everything is about my enjoyment. Detached from that. Everything is about something else. Everything is about realizing my nature and being in service to Krishna. That's what everything is about. And when one's consciousness comes to that position, that's purified consciousness. And then it's not, the premise of your question, thing after thing after thing, this really tough and negative difficulties. It's just circumstances of life change. Let me deal with the circumstance as it comes in the mode of service. And that, back to her question, that's a free will choice. I don't have to choose like that. But if one chooses like that, going back to chapter 12, I'm the swift deliverer. We're not alone in the whole program. If one thinks of oneself as alone, it's resting on my shoulders, then we're not going to do so well. That's not yoga. Yoga is I'm not alone. There's the Supreme, and I want to connect with the Supreme and stay connected with the Supreme through thick and thin, through good times and bad times. I want to stay connected to the Supreme.
That's amazing, Maharaj. So basically, use that as an opportunity to find out some service.
And by keeping good by sadhu sangha and regular shravanam kirtanam, the purification and the service opportunities you'll see them, and as they come, you'll engage in them as they're available.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yes. Online question. How to move from platform of gaining theoretical knowledge to applying the knowledge practically in devotional service?
Well, by doing it. How do you move from theoretical to practical? By doing it. The thing that you've understood, as best you can understand, you apply. And supposing you're not habituated to apply, then be in the association. Find the association with people that are keen to apply. It's just like, for example, there are some teachers of Bhagavad Gita or Bhakti Shastri that are application-oriented kind of teachers. And so find such a teacher and be in the association of those who want to apply themselves. Okay. Looks like we're finished for the evening, huh?
One more question online from YouTube. Guru Maharaj, does my present tendencies depend a lot on my past deeds?
Yes.
If I understand that those tendencies, like expecting services from others, disappoint us, how to control them?
Say the question, not the preamble. What happens if somebody asks us to do some service or doesn't ask us to do some service? What was the question?
If we have a tendency of accepting services from others and things like that, how to control?
How to control if we
those tendencies?
Let me just say back the question so I make sure I got it. Supposing that some people don't know how to say no. Service, yes, and then I get like overwhelmed. So it's a question how to not get overwhelmed with saying yes to every service that's given to me. Is that the question?
No, the question is I have a tendency to expect services from others.
Expect services from others. Well, my advice to that kind of thing is there's one thing you can expect, and that is that Krishna is kind. And other than that, unrealistic expectations are a cause of a problem. Expectations should match reality. So don't expect that people are going to do things that you like, or serve you or give you services that you like. Don't expect it. Expect that Krishna is kind.
Follow-up question the same person is asking.
Yeah.
At the same time, how to help those come to the level of serving the Lord?
Oh, like you're a good example. That's the best. And give transparently transmit the knowledge that you have understood from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Transparently present the knowledge and live it. Be the example of that knowledge. Both. There's spiritual potency in both. Transmitting the knowledge properly and transparently, and living that knowledge. Both have spiritual potency. And that spiritual potency helps people come take shelter of spiritual potency. That's association principle. Next.
Anonymous question. How to stay focused on Krishna consciousness when certain people who have caused hurtful situations in our past comes again and again into our life?
Well, this question is certainly on topic. The topic of sadasad yoni janmasu. We take responsibility for the good fortune and the ill fortune that comes to us because of our past free will choices. This was your question. So if some ill fortune is coming your way, you understand you're the cause. And that something is the instrument for your ill fortune. But don't blame the instrument for your ill fortune on the instrument. So what to do? And then you accept this misfortune has come from my own misdeeds or very poor free will choices, so I take responsibility for my choices. Don't blame the instrument for that which is bringing back the mistaken free will choices that you made. So rather, going forward, make wise choices. That's your question. Make wise choices and stay in it, have your life move in a karma-free direction, a spiritual direction. Now, that's easier said than done, but that's how to. Take responsibility and move forward with wise choices. And let those wise choices be guided by Guru Sadhu Shastra. We heard on this topic the other day, was it Amangalam? Mangala means auspicious. Amangala means inauspicious. And Dhruva's mother is advising him, don't wish ill or find fault in others. Supposing something, somebody continues to do some bad things, and you're, in the proximity or even on the receiving end of those bad things. His mother's advice, Suniti advice, is don't find fault in others and don't get in a get back mood towards others. Don't hold those negative feelings, because by doing so, you're guaranteeing those very same things will come to you. You wish ill to others, that ill will come to you. That's the mind, affect the circumstance in the body. That's your question. So redirect the mind. And redirect the mind where? Well, the advice that she gave to Dhruva is Lord Vishnu. You want a kingdom? Go to Vishnu. He says your grandfather, Brahma, he got his post that way. Your great-grandfather, Brahma, your grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu, got his post that way. So you want a big kingdom? Lord Vishnu. But don't get into this, thing with rah, 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 rah. That other person. Don't do that. There's another one? One more? Go ahead, last one.
Is it possible to develop all good qualities in this lifetime specified in Bhagavad Gita 13.8 to 13.12
Yeah.
for the conditioned souls?
Yeah. Mai Chananya Yogina, we already discussed. Look in the first paragraph of the purport of that series of verses, and you'll find the answer, but the answer is yes. Okay. So, thank you very much.